Here we go. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Conversations with Jacob. This is episode number 100, I guess. I don't know. It's been 4 months and since I've done this because of technical issues. But my guest this week is Dr. Danny uh, Brassell. Is that right?
Got it. Thank you, Jacob.
Absolutely. And welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Jacob. And more importantly, thanks for all the joy you're spreading around the world. We need a lot more of you. 100 episodes, you should be very, very pleased by that.
Well, it's either 100 episodes or almost 100 episodes. I've talked to almost 100 people.
Great.
So so it's between 90 or 100. I'm not sure yet. So welcome to the podcast. And can you tell the people watching like a background of who you are?
All right. Well, I guess if I was going to write an autobiography, I'd probably call my autobiography Pivots because I feel like I've already lived 9 lives, Jacob. Over 30 years ago, I was a journalist. I got to cover President Bush Sr. in the 1992 presidential election. I had a great job, got to work with all of the editors of major dailies, and one editor offered me a city beat for $16,500 a year. Meanwhile, a friend of mine told me they were hiring teachers in South Central Los Angeles for $25,000 a year. So I became a teacher for the noblest of reasons, Jacob, for the high pay. And I actually fell in love with teaching. I've actually taught all age levels from preschoolers all the way up to rocket scientists. I can make that claim because I used to teach English as a second language to engineering students at the University of Southern California. And then in 2005, my wife and I attended a real estate seminar, which turned out to be a scam, and we lost everything. And I could focus on all the negatives, but I'm a positive person. I like to focus on all the lessons learned. First of all, my wife is my soulmate. I put her through the ringer, and she stuck right by me. She's an incredible human being. Secondly, I learned that money's not the end all be all because you can learn it, you can lose it all overnight, just like that. Third, I try not to judge other people because if I was somebody looking at what I had done, I would say, well, you deserve that. But now I realize unless you know everything about a person, you really don't know anything about a person. Fourth, I became Christian, which I'm always embarrassed to confess, but the more I read the Bible, I'm not the first screw up to find Jesus. And fifth, in order to avoid bankruptcy, my accountant said I had to make this much more money that year. And so I started speaking on the side, and I hit his number right on the number. Well, then the next year, Jacob, he gave me a much higher number, and I hit that number right on the number. So in year three, I thought, well, maybe I should set a higher number. And basically, during one of the worst economic downturns in American history, I was able to build up a highly lucrative speaking business, which caught the attention of a lot of people. And for many years, I also trained people how to speak in one of the biggest speaker training companies. And it was there that I was fortuitous enough to meet Coach Jimmy Hayes Nelson. And Coach Jimmy and I both identified the same problem. The company we were working with, and I'm not going to give names because I don't believe, I think it was King Charles who told me, don't name drop, Danny. So I, Jimmy and I identified the same problem. This company was charging executives and entrepreneurs about $10,000 to be in a room with about 50 other people to put together their presentations. And there wasn't really much personalization. There was lots of different industries and businesses represented, so we couldn't focus in on exactly their concerns. And there was really no follow-up. And so Coach Jimmy and I, along with our friend Dave Ward, created the Well Crafted Story Workshop, where basically now we work with entrepreneurs and executives and business owners on how to transform their personal experiences into powerful business stories that inspire action, drive growth, and create a lasting impact. So that's the very long answer to your short question, but that catches you up to present day me.
So when you was growing up, and what did you want to be? I guess as a kid.
I want to be president of the United States, but now I don't know why I think I'd like to be ex-president of the United States. I don't think I'd want to be president, but ex-president's pretty good. You get probably about 3 million a speech, you get 20 million for your memoirs, you can go off wherever you want. That's a pretty good gig, but I don't know why anybody in their right mind would want to be president of the United States today.
So, and how did you get involved by covering the campaign of George Bush?
I attended my undergraduate was at American University in Washington, D.C., right up the road from you in Roanoke. And I loved the political action in, I mean, actually, I shouldn't say that because I did work on Capitol Hill for a little while, and I always tell people in high school I used to clean toilets at a health club, and in college I worked on Capitol Hill. And if given the choice, I'd much rather clean toilets than ever have to work on Capitol Hill again. But I loved reporting. I loved being able to be right on top of different stories, and I had a lot of fun. And my friends thought I was crazy to leave journalism for teaching, but since I've left journalism, we've lost basically the population of Orlando in the number of journalism jobs that have been lost because now people claim fake news and people don't value news story. And I always tell people there's really no such thing as fake news. There's people who depend on one news source. You need to look at lots of different points of view and then make your own decisions. That's what I loved as being a teacher. When I used to teach my students history, the two things I taught them is history books are usually written by the winners, kids. Every event in history has multiple points of view. And my job as your teacher is not to teach you what to think, it's to teach you how to think. And I think we'd be much better served if we'd stopped letting people tell us, what to think and really start using our minds and be better critical thinkers.
Now, and why do you think people calls news out there fake news? Is it because they don't want to believe it, or is it because they're believed to believe something else?
Well, I mean, I think people believe what they want to believe. That's
Okay.
why I don't, that's why I don't get in a political argument with a person. You're not going to change that person's point of view. It's kind of like as a Christian, my goal is to make my Christianity a verb instead of a noun. Stop telling people what you are. Why don't you start showing people what you are? And I think if people would treat each other a lot kinder and with more respect, I mean, you and I don't have to agree. That's perfectly acceptable. As a matter of fact, I love this country because we're a country of a lot of people that have been thrown away out of other countries, and we have lots of differing points of view, and it's what makes us stronger. And I really wish people would start remembering that we're stronger because of our diverse points of view.
Now, I read your biography, and in it said that you was the Jim Carrey of what you do.
An attendee at one of my speeches said I was like Jim Carrey with a PhD. Basically, I have a rule in life. I take my job seriously. I don't take myself too seriously because I ain't all that, and neither are you. And if you think you're all that, teach kindergarten for a week because those little ones will set you straight. When I was teaching one day, one of my little ones, LaShonda, raises her hand. I'm like, LaShonda, question. She's like, Miss Bissell, when are you going to trim your nose hair? I'm like, this afternoon. Thanks for bringing that to my attention. I ain't all of that. And so I just try to lighten things up. It's kind of what I bring to my coaching too. It was very important for Coach Jimmy and me. We saw that the way a lot of people were being coached to speak, and yes, we do work with famous speakers and celebrities. Jimmy likes to name drop more than me. I like to keep a little bit of privacy with my clients. Most of the people we work with are business owners, entrepreneurs, executives. A lot of them are terrified of speaking, but what they want to do is they got to get comfortable speaking in front of big groups of people or in front of boards, or if they're a venture capitalist or if they're a pastor to their congregation. And so that's, you know, the way a lot of speaker coaches are training people is they want you to talk about your most negative and traumatizing stories. And there's three reasons why I don't believe in that, Jacob. I mean, so what we do is we teach people to create what we call a well-crafted story. Politicians would call this a stump speech. Superhero movies, it's called an origin story. You can call it peanut butter and jelly. What this is a speech you're going to deliver again and again to introduce yourself to new audiences to get them interested in what you do. And so a lot of speaker coaches will teach you to talk about these traumatic stories. And I don't believe in that. And there's three reasons. First of all, the world just survived a global pandemic. Everybody's had a lot of bad stuff happen to them. I don't think we need another sad story. I think we need more stories of hope. Second of all, we're teaching you to create a speech that you're going to deliver again and again. Do you really want to talk about the most traumatic moment of your life again and again? I mean, I have a friend. his daughter was killed in a school shooting. He's told that story over 1,000 times. I mean, you got to be a lot stronger than me to talk about the worst day of your life again and again. And third, and this is where people get angry with me. I have one objective when I'm on stage. I want you to leave feeling better than when you came in. I want you laughing, smiling, happy. I think there's something admirable about that as a goal. I believe that the person that tells the same sad story again and again, by the 20th time they're telling that story, now those are crocodile tears, and now you're being manipulative. And I'm not saying it's not an effective sales strategy. It's actually a very effective sales strategy. But I personally don't want to have to take a shower after I get on stage because I just manipulated my audience. There are much more ethical ways to get people interested in what you do. And so I like to bring a lot of humor and laughter. I just think life's too short to be. This is why politics doesn't really interest me anymore because it's become such a downer and people are so negative and nasty to one another. And I like being around people that are lifting you up. This is why I like watching sports. My poor wife is like, "Why are you like it? Why do you love sports so much?" I'm like, "Because at any moment something extraordinary can happen," and that's kind of my outlook on life.
And what kind of sports do you like to watch?
It's pathetic, Jacob. I'll watch anything, man. I was in China. I was stuck. I was watching ping pong and synchronized water swimming, something. I don't know, water dancing or whatever. I'll watch anything. I mean, the Olympics. I'll watch anything at the Olympics. My wife gets annoyed with me during the Olympics. The Olympics is the best because they tell the background stories of the athletes. And my wife always gets annoyed with me, Jacob, because I always root against America. And she's like, "Why are you rooting against America?" I'm like, "Well, honey, who am I going to root for? The American with the microchips in his Nikes or the barefoot Sudanese refugee who just survived a civil war?" And they just told his story. He's like, "I learned how to run running away from the bullets in my village." I'm like, "Of course I'm rooting for that guy. It's the most amazing story ever." That's what I love. I love, like, I mean, I'll watch basketball, football, baseball, hockey like crazy. It's pathetic now. I've gotten into Premier League soccer and Champions League. It's pathetic. The reason I got into that, Jacob, is because the crowds are like singing and they're so into it. And I'm like, wow, that's really kind of fun. And it's so boring most of the time. Nothing happens. But when something happens, it's kind of like a baseball game. Oh, something happened. That's pretty amazing.
Now, how many speeches have you done altogether?
Probably about, well, at least 3,500 speeches worldwide. I do at least 100 days a year on the road. Most of my speeches, probably for my speaking side of my business, 80% of my speeches are usually to schools, working with the teachers and the administrators to convince them not to quit, and to the parents to show them ways to get their kids pumped up about reading. But I do about 20% of my gigs are with corporate gigs. Basically energizing their teams and showing their teams that the company actually cares about what they do. I love speak. I'll speak, people say I've never met a microphone I don't like. So I love getting on stages all over the place.
How can someone build a talk that sells without feeling kind of salesy a little bit?
Yeah, this is a big thing, Jacob. That's a great question. So the process that Coach Jimmy and I take you through. So the three of us founders are I call us the professor, the performer, and the producer because my background is in academia, so I'm the professor. Coach Jimmy used to be on Broadway, so he's the performer, and Dave was an attorney, so we call him the producer. And what we take our clients through is a process we call the 5C process. That's just what we call it. It's a formula that is used by lots of different people with different variations. But the 5Cs are clarity, connect, content, call to action, and close. And so before anybody creates a presentation, the very first thing you need is clarity on your presentation. There are two questions you have to ask yourself. And if you can answer these questions succinctly, you're in pretty good shape. And if you cannot answer one or both questions, you're going to be in trouble. And I'll tell you right now, Jacob, 95% of the people I work with cannot answer one or both of these questions. So the first question is, who is your audience? And so, so I'll take you through it, Jacob. So for this podcast, who is
Right.
your audience?
Well, my audience, it's on YouTube. My audience, I don't know.
Okay, this is why we go you through this process. And
Yeah,
so, like a lot of people say, well, my audience is everybody. I'm like, well,
yeah,
if you're trying to
yeah.
serve everybody, you're not going to serve anybody. And so, a little strategy I would say is you should start, there's a saying, the riches are in the niches. And the easiest way to do that is to start with the group that you feel most comfortable with. So when I first started speaking, I was a teacher. And so I started speaking to teachers, and then I grew to start speaking to parent groups, and then I started speaking to school administrators, and then I was in a mastermind. And a very successful business owner asked me to train his sales force, and I said, I have no experience training salespeople. And he looked at me like I was an idiot. He's like, Danny, if you can get middle school inner city boys reading Shakespeare, I'm pretty sure you can motivate my sales team. That was great because he expanded my point of view. So I don't want anybody to misconstrue this. You can actually expand your audience, but it's really smart to start with a niche. I mean, I was working with a woman a few weeks ago, Kathy. She was amazing. So, Jacob, get this. Here's her niche. She makes saddles for professional polo players. So that's her niche. I'm like, wow. I'm like, well, how much money did you make last year? She's like, about $800,000. I'm like, I need to start making saddles for professional polo. I'm like, who knew that was their niche? I mean, I worked with Jimmy, and I worked with this plumber, and he's making like 10 figures a year as a plumber. He has like 28 vans going. It's unbelievable. And so you really should start with who is your audience, and you can expand that audience, but start real specific. And then the second question you need to ask yourself is, well, what is the problem that you solve? So I'll ask you, Jacob, what is the problem that this podcast solves for people?
It solves maybe it'll solve what people are going through in real life. Maybe if they're going through something, depression or whatever, maybe that will kind of bring like closure to them or maybe help them in some way.
You did a good job with that, Jacob, because you talked about the actual problem, whereas the mistake I see a lot of people make is they look at the solution rather than the problem. So you talked about depression. Yes, depression is a problem. Most people would have said, "Well, I lift people up." Well, that's a solution. That's not a problem. So I was working with a fitness trainer. I said, "Well, what's the problem that you solve?" And she said, physical well-being. Like, well, physical well-being is a good thing. You should have a physical well-being. Maybe the problem is you're helping people overcome obesity. That's a problem. When we're working with financial planners, they'll say, oh, having a healthy nest egg, a good retirement. Well, that's a good thing. Maybe the problem that you're solving is making sure that people have enough money till the day they die. That's a problem. And so when you can answer these questions, then you're able to start creating your presentation. Now, that really didn't answer your question, which is how do you create a presentation that helps sell without feeling salesy? So I'm going to skip over our connection piece and go into the content and the call to action piece. The biggest mistake, and you might even suffer from this because I see a lot of podcasters make this mistake. The biggest mistake, I'll say this is the second biggest mistake. The biggest mistake I tell people that they need to overcome is to stop telling your audience about your successes and start sharing your failures, because not everybody in your audience has succeeded, but they've all failed. And the more you share your own failures, the more you share your own vulnerabilities, Brene Brown would call it vulnerabilities, and I agree with her. The more you show people that you're just like them, they're going to feel connection to you. Oh, wow, Jacob is just like me. I can really trust this guy. Building that trust is really important. Russell Brunson, who owns ClickFunnels, he has a great way of saying it. He says, never in human history has it been more difficult to get the first dollar out of potential clients' hands, and it's never been easier to get the second dollar out of their hands. And what he's saying is you got to build up that trust. Once they trust you, they'll do anything for you. So once a person is listening to your podcast and realizes, oh, this is always positive and I get practical strategies that I can use, well, now you got a customer for life. And so that's the biggest problem I have, but directly related to your question, the second biggest problem that I see people have is they don't have one clear call to action. They have multiple calls to action. So yesterday I was on 4 podcasts, and 3 of the podcasts at the very end, the host said, "Oh, make sure you like, subscribe, and give us a 5-star review." And I kind of kidded all of them. I'm like, well, just so you know, you just told your audience to do three things. They're not going to do any of them. You got to give them one thing. You can't give them. It's why Trader Joe's makes more money on average per store than any other major grocery store. Because if you go to like a Kroger's and you're looking for mustard, there's 50 different types of mustard. When you go to Trader Joe's, there's one type of mustard, mustard. Oh, I guess I'm buying mustard. You don't have to make a choice. There it is. I need mustard. There it is. Uh, I always tell people choices confuse and cause you to lose. So this is the biggest mistake I see most people in their calls to, oh, hey, just make sure, hey, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram. Well, you're on nothing because you just confused the audience. Give them one thing, one way to communicate with you. And what we do in the content section of the presentation is we show our clients how to whisper sweet nothings in the audience's ear. And what this is a technique and really a book I think everybody should own is Influence by Robert Cialdini. I love Cialdini. He's a professor emeritus at Arizona State University. And the entire book is how to have ethical sales with the premise that the only way that you do a sale is when it's win-win. Everybody has to win. And I love that. I'm an abundance thinker. I don't like this winner take all mentality because I think the world's a big place. I don't believe I have competition. I just believe I have potential collaborators, and I don't need to put somebody else down to lift myself up. I don't believe in that type of sales strategy. And so, whatever your call to action is, what a very successful presentation is going to do is it's going to lead you up to that call to action. So, for example, let's say your call to action is, I want people to invest in my coaching program. That's your call to action. Good. We now know the call to action. So now in the content portion of our presentation, which I always say, I don't want my clients teaching any more than three things because people can't remember any more than three things. And even those three things are questionable if they can remember those. I mean, lots of reasons. This is why I'm the professor. You know, if you want an opinion, go to ask your Aunt Ethel. If you want research-based strategies on why these things work, you come to me because I only do things based on the research. The research is very clear on this. People remember the beginning of your talk and the end of your talk. They don't remember anything you taught them in between. Translation, the bun is more important than the burger, you know. So, but the burger, if we're setting it up right, is very important. And so when you're teaching in the content portion of your presentation, you can be whispering, I call it whispering sweet nothings in a person's ear. So for example, Jacob, let's say you meet the woman of your dreams on your first date. Now, you're having dinner with her. You're like, wow, I'm really enjoying this woman. Do you look at her and say, you know, I'm in love with you. I'd love for you to marry me. You would never do that on a first date. And yet I see people doing that in their speeches, metaphorically. What you want to be doing is to whisper those sweet nothings, because what you're trying to do is to get the second date. Oh wow, gosh, your hair is beautiful. I love that you love hiking. There's a great trail, the Roanoke Trail, right down the road. On the weekends, they have these wonderful expeditions for people. Would you be interested in maybe going on one of those hikes? What you're trying to do is allude to the next date. This is how we evaluate the effectiveness of your presentation. I see this mistake all the time. A lot of people, oh, I got a standing ovation, or wow, people think I'm a great speaker. Well, that's all fine and good, but I'm working with business people. I'm trying to get to affect your bottom line. And the only way we're going to affect your bottom line is how many people are deciding to take the next step with you. Now, that the next step, it can be an unpaid next step. So for you, it'd be like subscribe to my podcast. That's an unpaid next step. Great. Or book a free phone call. It can be a paid offer like buy my product or invest in my coaching program. Just one clear offer. And then what we do is once we understand what the offer is, we whisper the sweet nothings. So if I'm offering coaching, when I'm teaching, I say, oh, Jacob is a person I was coaching one-on-one 3 months ago. And what we did with his business is we did this and this and this. And this is why it proves this concept. Here's what I just did without you realizing it. Subliminally in your head now, with you're still in my teaching mode. I'm teaching you content, but I just kind of whisper to you, oh, I coach people one on one. And now while you're listening to my content, you're sitting back and being like, huh, Danny coaches. I wonder how many people he coaches. I wonder if he'd coach me. I wonder how much it costs to get a coach like that. And so the reason you're doing that is you're alluding to things. And so once you get to your call to action, rather than this is one of the most uncomfortable parts of presentations. I've worked with some pretty famous speakers, and they get uncomfortable during this part because they've been teaching, and now they have to sell. And humans were very sharp. You know, you might not think it if you watch people on TV, but actually humans are actually a lot sharper than you think. And we know the difference between somebody teaching us and somebody selling us. And the moment they start selling us, we turn off. Well, this is why Coach Jimmy and I, we're teaching you a different way. In the teaching portion, we're actually alluding to what our call to action is going to be. And so rather than having to be pushy once we get to our call to action and have to push people into an offer, people are like waiting. And now that I give you my offer, they're like, oh, I was hoping that Danny would offer coaching because he was talking about he worked with Jacob and Jacob. That was such a great story. See, this is the power of stories. This is how you get people interested in what you do. And if you watch, you'll start watching presentations in an entirely different way. I mean, I work with a lot of politicians, and I always give them a hard time because I'm like, you ever notice nobody that ran for president of the United States ever grew up middle class? They all grew up dirt poor. The reason they did that is they have to show you, oh, I'm just like you. I mean, and whenever I give a political example, by the way, it has nothing to do with the politics. It's just the speaking style. But I always like to reference President Reagan. President Reagan was a magnificent speaker. If you watch him, here's a guy that is a millionaire living in Bel Air, California, who was so effective at connecting with audiences, he got auto workers in Detroit, Michigan thinking, wow, I could have a beer with this guy. That's pretty sharp. He's able to connect to people that way. And when you can connect, that's where your power comes from. That's a very, again, long answer, and it kind of is all over the place, but it talks a little bit about how to be able to sell without being salesy. And really, the gist of the answer to your question, Jacob, is stop selling your audience, just serve your audience. All I want you to do when you're on stage is I want you to look at your audience like they're dying. You have the antidote. And if they don't get your antidote, they will die. If you look at it that way, it's a totally different perspective and the audience will feel it.
Now, and what do you think is the biggest mistake that people makes while speaking? Is there like I guess like key points that they mess up, or what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, so again, a lot of them are bright. I'll give you an example. We were working with a financial planner, Richard, and Richard's very successful. And he used to start off his presentations. He's like, I've been in the business for 30 years. I've made over $1 billion for my clients. I've worked with this famous person and this famous person. And I said, time out, Richard. What are the three most important elements of real estate? Location, location, location. It's all right to brag, but you're doing it in the wrong part of your presentation. You have to connect with your audience. And so what we did is we changed his opening. So now he talks about the very first client that he ever booked 30 years ago. And it's basically a comedy of errors. He made every mistake possible. I still have no idea why this person invested their money with Richard. It's a very funny story. And this is what was interesting about this, Jacob, was the way Richard gets his clients is about twice a week. He has these seminars at fancy steakhouses for about 15 couples in their 50s. And they get a free steak dinner, and he pitches them on why they should invest all their money with him for their retirement. And Richard said that when it's a married couple, the man's usually sitting there with his arms crossed, looking skeptical, like, what's this guy trying to sell me? I just want to finish my steak and get out of here. Um, and he said that out of the 15 people, excuse me, 15 couples, he would get about six of the 15 couples would call for a consultation afterwards. Well, now that he's changed his story, the guy that used to sit there with his arms crossed is now patting his knee because he's laughing so hard, and he's increased the number of those appointments from 6 out of 15 to 12 out of 15. And that's how we're evaluating your success, is how many people want to take that next step with you. This is critical. And so I always, and I like to add humor. And to me, the best form of humor is self-effacing. If you watch the best comedians, Kevin Hart is a short black guy, so he tells a lot of jokes about being a short black guy. Jim Gaffigan's a big fat white guy, so he tells lots of jokes about being a big fat white guy. When you put it on yourself, people appreciate it because you can laugh at yourself. If you can't laugh at yourself, well, frankly, I don't want to do business with you.
And do you think the reason people mess up while speaking is because they brag a little bit about themselves?
I think a lot of people brag too much. They're trying to impress. They're trying to impress with numbers and statistics. You know, of all people, it was Joseph Stalin who said a million dead is a statistic, one person dead is a tragedy. Translation, facts tell, stories sell. Uh, you know, um, uh, Rather than inform, you want to transform your audience. And so the way you do that is with stories. And so here's an exercise your audience can do. This is one of the first things I take my clients through is later on, I want you to sit in a comfortable chair with a pen and paper, libation of choice. And for an hour, I want you to write down every story that's ever happened in your life. And I don't mean the entire story. I just mean triggers like the time I locked myself out of the car in front of Costco, the time dad spilt mustard on his tie at that fancy restaurant. You'll find in an hour you can come up with like easily like 500 anecdotes like this. So that's the first part of the exercise. The second part of the exercise is then I want you to look at all of those stories and figure out, well, what's this story really about? Oh, this is a story about never giving up. Oh, this is a story about loyalty. Oh, this is a story about being nervous. And so on my computer, I literally have hundreds of folders with tens of thousands of stories. So when I need a story for a certain thing a characteristic of my audience, I have a different story for it. So I'll give you an example. So um, I like stories. People think they have to have impressive stories, and I totally disagree with that. I mean, I coach a guy from Saudi Arabia. He's crazy. He's climbed the highest peak of all of the highest mountain in all seven continents. He's swam with sharks in Madagascar. He's done the Iditarod in the North Pole. I look at him, I'm like, nobody can relate to you. Not everybody's climbed Mount Everest. It's ridiculous. The best stories are those ones that all of us have, and that's why I love childhood stories because everybody peed their pants when they were 6 years old. You know, everybody's had that nervous moment. Everybody had something like that. And so here's an example. When I was an elementary school teacher, every other teacher at my school went through hundreds, if not thousands, of band-aids every single school year. I mean, kids love band-aids. They work better than smokes on the prison yard. Well, every year I went through exactly one band-aid. My colleagues always ask me, "What's your secret?" Well, on the first day of class, I always have at least one chubby little boy. We'll call him Paco. And all morning long, Paco is scraping at his scab. And finally, after lunch, he has success. He starts bleeding. And the annoying little girl next to him rubs her nose, raises her hand, says, "Mr. Brassell, Paco's bleeding." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, Paco, you know what you need? You need a Band-Aid." Now, 33 little heads look at me. I'm like, I got a drawer full of Band-Aids in my desk. And I don't just have ordinary Band-Aids. I have Mighty Morphin Power Ranger Band-Aids. And I'm going to give you the Green Ranger because he's the coolest. Now, Paco is grinning from ear to ear. All the kids are smiling. I take Paco to my desk. I say, "Oh, before I put on the Band-Aid, we got to clean out the wound." So then I show the kids the bottle of rubbing alcohol. I say, "Hey, Paco, hold and squeeze onto my hand. This might sting a little bit." I start throwing on the rubbing alcohol. He's screaming bloody murder. Ah! I put on the Band-Aid. I'm like, "There you go, Paco. Anybody else need a Band-Aid?" My students can have a skull fracture and they will never ask me for a band-aid. Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm not going to give you band-aids. I'm going to give you practical strategies on how to create a well-crafted story that not only attracts more clients but converts them into customers. So you see how I took a story, but there's actually a point to the story. A lot of people tell anecdotes, but there's no point. You need to actually have a point to your story. I'll go back to Kathy, who I don't know. I'm thinking I just love Kathy because she makes saddles for professional polo players. So she was having difficulties with her call to action. And so I finally asked her, I said, "Well, what do you want your audience to do?" And she said, "Well, I want them to work with me." I'm like, "Well, why should they work with you?" She's like, "Well, because I know more than they do. I know exactly what you know." I'm like, "Oh, okay. So you need to hire an expert story." She's like, "Yeah, hire an expert." I'm like, "Okay." So here's a little technique. This is why I love stories because they're metaphorical. Rather than hitting the nail on the head, like buy my product, you're using a story to illustrate why a person should buy your products. So for a hire an expert story, I'd say I'm going to leave you with this. Many years ago, my wife and I had theater tickets, and we were dressed to the nines, all excited, driving to the theater when we got a flat tire. And my wife said, "Well, I'll call AAA." I'm like, "You don't have to call AAA. I'm a man. I can fix a flat tire." So I got out of the car, I opened up the trunk, I got the spare tire, I got the pumper thing and the thing that's like an X that you take the nuts out with, and you know, 27 minutes later, I had grease all over myself. I was filthy. I hadn't fixed the flat tire. My wife is shaking her head like I could have done so much better than this guy. Well, unbeknownst to me, she'd called AAA, and this tow truck shows up. And some 17-year-old punk hops out of the tow truck and in 3 minutes flat fixed the flat tire. You know, I think there are times in life when all of us think we can do it ourselves. But if you want to save time, you want to save money, and you want to save a whole lot of headache and embarrassment, you hire an expert.
Oh
So
yeah.
again, what I'm doing is I'm taking a story to illustrate the point to get my audience to see what they need to do next. That's how you use stories more effectively. And this is where I get the joy in putting together presentations because every single day I work with people on things that I just love to watch their transformation. It's what I loved about teaching. I mean, the thing about me, Jacob, which is tough is I avoided coaching for a long time because as a teacher, I've always had a very high standard for my students. I will not let you fail. Like, I'm actually going to keep you accountable. I will be on your back until you succeed. And why I love working with entrepreneurs and executives and business owners is they're highly motivated and they do the work, which is great. I mean, if you want to get so here for your audience, people always ask, how do you get better at speaking? Well, there's two ways to get better at speaking. First of all, watch lots of speakers. I mean, I watch 10 speakers a day. I watch politicians. I watch comedians. I watch televangelists. I watch them in front of big groups, in front of small groups, in front of men, in front of women. Here, I'll give you a ninja strategy. I watch a lot of televised award shows because when a person wins the Academy Award, they only have 45 seconds to connect with their audience. I want to see how they use their 45 seconds. Now, most people, Jacob, they waste their time. They get up there, they're like, I want to thank God, I want to thank the Academy. It's stupid. Nobody pays attention. But every now and then, a person does an excellent job. So a few years ago, there was a gentleman by the name of Joe Walker who won the Academy Award for Best Film Editing. Now, Jacob, this is the Academy Awards. The important people are in the front of the room, the actors. And you can tell the actors in the audience, nobody's paying attention. This is film editing. And Joe Walker gets up on stage. He's British. He speaks very slowly and deliberately. He says, a lot of people don't know this, but when phrased properly, the term Academy Award nominee can be used as an insult. Well, now the camera scans the audience. You see people leaning in like, what's he talking about? And he goes on, he says, for example, yesterday I got in an argument with my 17-year-old daughter, and she said, well, Academy Award nominee Joe Walker. All of a sudden, you see everybody laughing hysterically. He gets off stage. Denzel Washington wants to meet him. Sandra Bullock wants to meet him. Brad Pitt wants to meet him. Time magazine said it was one of the highlights of the Academy Awards that year. That's the power of connecting in 45 seconds. So the first way to get better at speaking is watch a lot of people speak. The second way to get better, I've been blessed with lots of wonderful coaches throughout my career. One of my coaches was a guy by the name of Jim Rohn, and Jim used to say, you can't pay other people to do your push-ups. Translation, you got to do the work. You got to do the reps. I mean, you got to speak. You don't get better one time. You got to do it again and again. I mean, I guarantee you, Jacob, the first time you did this podcast, you stunk.
Yeah.
And the second time you did it, you stunk. But you didn't stink as bad as the first time. And now you've done almost 100 episodes and it's like a well-oiled machine and you have this routine, you know how to go with the flow, but it takes time. I mean, I tell people, even the smallest towns in America have a Lions Club, an Optimist Club, a Rotary Club, a Kiwanis Club, a Women's Club. You know, there's schools, there's synagogues, temples, churches, chambers of commerce. I was working with a guy 3 years ago, Jason. He drove me crazy. Jason was 22 years old. He's like, oh, I don't know anybody. I can't speak anywhere. Debbie Downer drove me crazy. I'm like, do you have a Facebook account? He's like, yeah. I'm like, we're going on right now, Facebook Live. he gets all nervous. I'm like, we're going on right now. I want to watch you. So we just put his presentation together. He went on live for 45 minutes on Facebook. One woman from Ontario, Canada, accidentally watched him, and he sucked. But I forced the next day I didn't watch him, but I said, you need to do this every single day. So the next day he went on again. He did it again. And he stunk, but he wasn't as bad as he was the first day. The reason I share this story, Jacob, is Jason has gone on Facebook Live every single day for the last 3 years. He now has 6,000 people in his Facebook community. And last year, he sold almost 7 figures worth of products to that
Wow.
community. And the reason I share the story is, I mean, his financial success is wonderful, but the reason I share this story, I'm so proud of him because he has that consistency. I mean, that dedication, that's why he got better. He did it every single day, and that's how you get better. I mean, I work with most of the people I work with, they're terrified to go on stage. They have stage fright and things like that. And the way you get rid of stage fright is you practice. The more you practice, this should become like the Lord's Prayer, the Pledge of Allegiance. You shouldn't have to think about it anymore, and you should be able to know how to react to different situations. So that's how you get better. Again, I'm giving you very long answers to your short questions.
It's all right. Now, have you ever helped somebody and they kind of not improve, or has everybody that you have improved in some way or the other?
I've had people that didn't improve because they didn't do anything, and that's why I'm on their back all the time. I won't let you do that. I'm just not going to let you get it. I actually was working with a client this morning because he hadn't done anything. I'm like, well, let's do it right now on the phone. Come on. I just won't. It's an obsessive compulsive disorder with me. I just will not let you. I mean, there's nothing fulfill. I mean, fulfillment to most companies is accepting the check. I'm like, yeah, it's great. I get paid, but fulfillment to me is watching the person grow and become outstanding. And so, no, I won't let you fail. That's just not in my vocabulary. I'm gonna force you to get. I mean, you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And the story I tell people when people say, "Well, Danny, you're so good at this," I'm like, really? When I was in 2018, I was giving some speeches to schools in India, and I got this one school all pumped up, and the kids were coming up to me afterwards. They're all excited and everything. And I looked down, and there's this 6-year-old boy, and he's got tears in his eyes. And I notice he's missing his left arm. And he looks up, he's like, how can I succeed? And so I crouch down, I get to his eye level. I'm like, when I was your age, I went to 18 different schools before I was 12 years old. Everybody called me stupid because I stuttered. And eventually I went to a school and a teacher, she worked one-on-one with me and she would sing things to me. And I found I could sing them back without my stutter. It's kind of like the movie The King's Speech. And eventually I lost my stutter and I became a swan. But I looked into that boy's eyes and I said, isn't it interesting? The little boy everybody used to make fun of and call him stupid because he didn't talk right now gets paid ridiculous sums of money to travel the world to do what? And he gets the biggest grin on his face. He's like, speak. I'm like, yeah, don't let anybody ever tell you what you cannot do. Anything is possible. Everything is teachable. I'm a big believer in that. It is skill set. Yes, some people are born with a gift of speaking, but most people are not. And it's a skill that I can train you. And I'm very confident about this. So the people out there that freak out about it, I'll give you another example. I was working with a very successful technology company in Silicon Valley. I was working with their engineers. And just so you know, Jacob, engineers are kind of introverted people. They're not exactly outgoing. They don't want to be on stage, but they had to be on stage for this one event. And I was working with an Indian engineer, the nicest guy in the world. He's like, Danny, please, please, you got to make me interesting so people don't make fun of me. And so he has a very difficult name to pronounce. I'm not going to give his real name. I will come up with a fake name. So the way we start his presentation now is he says, "Hello, my name is Shubhankar Majahardeen. Gee, I sure hope I'm pronouncing that correctly." And what it does is it gets everybody to smile. You don't have to be a stand-up comedian, but you got to make everybody in your audience feel comfortable realizing, oh, this is a good guy. He can laugh at himself. He's just like me. And it just takes a couple of moments like that in your presentation because in the connection part of your presentation, the first 5 minutes of your talk, your audience is making a decision. Am I going to be present or am I going to be engaged? And if you can get them engaged, you can take them wherever you want. And if they're just present, I'm convinced that there's nothing you can do uh, to ever capture their attention.
Now you've written a few books, and how did that come about? And when did you think that you could write a book?
Well, I was a journalist before, so I've always
Yeah,
loved.
that's right.
Uh, but when I was a middle school teacher, I was the only teacher in my school that none of the students were ever tardy, and it was because I always started off class by reading aloud a Paul Harvey story. I'm older than you. I don't know if you remember Paul Harvey. He passed away a couple of years ago at the age of 325 years old. When I was a kid growing up, he'd come on the radio every day at 12:15 and say, "I'm Paul Harvey with the rest of the story." And for 5 minutes, he'd tell you a story about a person or a company. And the entire time, you're trying to guess who it is or what it is. And my students absolutely loved those stories. But the problem with Paul Harvey was a lot of his stories were about like companies like Sears Roebuck. Well, today, nobody even knows what Sears Roebuck is. And so I wrote a book a few years ago called Leadership Begins with Motivation. And this is an homage to Paul Harvey. And the stories in this book are of more contemporary successful people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and people like that. Well, after I wrote the book, Jacob, I read it, and completely unintentionally, I realized, wow, a lot of the examples in this book are of white male Americans. And so the latest book I wrote is called Misfits and Crackpots. I actually made a podcast out of this too, of me reading it aloud to real lazy readers. And the stories in this book are primarily of women, minorities, and international people. It's actually the most fun I've ever had writing anything. I learned a lot. But I'm a big believer in stories, and it's in our DNA. Even cavemen, they told stories by the campfire of how they hunted down the woolly mammoth, or maybe their friend got hunted down by the woolly mammoth. And the stories were actually a survival tool. I mean, the guy that missed the story on why you shouldn't eat those berries, that's the caveman that should have been at the campfire that night listening to that story. So I'm a big believer in
uh,
stories serve you.
Now, and why do you think, and maybe you know the answer, maybe you don't. That's the whole reason for this podcast. And do you think, like the people like Elon Musk and the guy that got Amazon, that, that they've kind of done the same thing to get to where they're at today?
I don't know if there's good of a story. The best storyteller in that kind of genre, unfortunately, he passed away, but Steve Jobs was an amazing storyteller. The way he was able to construct stories to get you connected to things. I would encourage anybody to read the biography Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson. It's just filled with nuggets. But he was so great at communicating why this matters. You look at Howard Schultz, the CEO of and the founder of Starbucks. The founder of the major Starbucks, he doesn't look at Starbucks as a coffee shop. He looks at it as a community builder. Well, that's something worth rallying around, is how to build communities. The greatest leaders, they have visions, and I'm always amazed at, you read about Nelson Mandela when he was the Prime Minister of South Africa. His book, Long Walk to Freedom, is one of the most amazing things I've ever read. I mean, when he became the Prime Minister of South Africa, he had been in prison for 27 years for doing something which is a fundamental right of all Americans. He criticized his government, but he went to prison for 27 years. Well, when he became Prime Minister, the whites were freaking out. They're like, uh-oh, it's come up and stay. This guy is going to take it out on us. And so what did Mandela do? He created the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. This was the official policy of South Africa. If you were a white who had killed a black during apartheid, there was the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which you could step in front of the family whose child you killed or loved one you killed, confess to your crime, apologize, and it was wiped clean off your record. This was the official government policy. I mean, I'm beyond myself to even comprehend that in this day and age something could exist. And what happened? One of the quickest transitions of power where everybody, I mean, I was in South Africa just a few months ago, and Mandela is revered by the whites as much as the blacks. And I think there's maybe one or two people a century that have that kind of power. I mean, we had lots of them in the 20th century. We had Mandela, we had Martin Luther King, we had Gandhi, Mother Teresa. You look at Abraham Lincoln. I read about Abraham Lincoln all the time. I'm like, man, this person had an incredible way of communicating with people. He's one of my favorite political quotes of all time. He said, I know the best way to defeat my enemies. I shall make them my friends. Wow. Where's that kind of thinking nowadays? I just think it's the greatest. Like, that's the person I want to learn from, not these loudmouths that like to call each other bad names. That's not productive to me.
Now, do you think, kind of going with Abraham Lincoln and all of that, do you think back then they respected each other compared to today, where they uh, where they just go on out and post tweets online, calling people's names?
Yeah, I mean, well, social media has definitely changed the game. I mean, like you look at like a guy like FDR in a wheelchair and how the media wouldn't even photograph him in the wheelchair out of respect to the office. Try that today. Today there'd be, all kinds of people posting on their social media post. It does concern me that the lack of respect to people. I mean, again, I can't control other people. I can only control myself. And so I want to be an example because kids are watching us, and I think that's important. I mean, by the way, politicians have always been nasty. I mean, people talk about, oh, this was a really nasty election. I'm like, my goodness, when Thomas Jefferson and John Adams ran for president, Thomas Jefferson called John Adams a hermaphrodite. I mean, that's not exactly a nice thing to say to a person. President Jackson, the media, when he married his wife, his second wife, she hadn't overcome her divorce yet, technically. And so the media basically called her a prostitute, a whore. And she died shortly after President Jackson was elected. And his entire time in office, he refused to talk to the media. He blamed them for her death. I mean, so there's been nastiness along. It's a nasty game. And I don't want to be around that. I want to surround myself with people that are part of the solution, not part of the problem. And so you look at a person like Mandela, I, I think it was his pain that caused him humility that made him a much better leader. Lincoln suffered a lot of loss in his life, and it made him humble. Um, Humility is not a bad thing. The more I read about humility, the more I need to be that humble person. It's basically that saying, I ain't all that. There's always somebody sharper. There's always somebody prettier. Always somebody can do a better job. I think the way you connect with people is showing that humility. Like, hey, at the beginning of a speech, Jimmy has a good way of phrasing this. He says, you got three gotta's. And since I'm a teacher, it always has to be an acronym or alliterative or something. So I say you got to rap. So rap stands for relatability, authority, and purpose. And so in the first 5 minutes of your presentation, you got to show that you're relatable. You got to show your audience you're just like them. I'm just like you, Jacob. But then you also have to show you have authority. I've suffered from the same thing that you're suffering from right now, Jacob, but I found the solution. So now I have authority. And then you got to show your purpose. And this is why this matters. Kind of one of my purposes, I've been alluding to it, is I just want people to be kinder and more respectful. I don't want people to agree. I really don't. I don't think that serves us. If everybody was the same, COVID would have wiped us out. It would
Yeah.
have. But we're not the same. And that's great. That's what makes us strong is, I'm so proud. I'm a proud American. I'm never prouder to be an American than during the opening ceremonies, the Olympic Games. As you watch the opening ceremonies, watch all the different countries come in. You got Norway comes in, they're all blonde hair, blue eyes. You got Japan comes in, they're all Japanese looking. Then you got America, a bunch of mutts strutting in, you know. Give me the biggest redneck going, USA, we just won the gold medal, Christy Yamaguchi. And I'm like, dude, you see that? I mean, this is what makes us great. We're all different, and there's nothing wrong with being different. And I think that one of my strongest characteristics is that I am stubborn, but and you'll probably tell me something I don't want to hear, but what I do really well is I'll reflect on that. It'll stay in my head for about 3 days. And if I feel like that's a better way of doing it, I will come back to you and say, you know what? I thought about what you said, Jacob. That sounds better. Let's try that. That's a good thing. I wish more people would be like that. I wish more people weren't so dang stubborn. Oh, I'm always right. I have a post-it on my desk, and the post-it says, "What if I'm wrong?" Could be. I could be wrong. This is why I always love when people are so 100% right. They're 100% right. I'm okay. Yeah, I'm like, it's that quote, 2000 years ago, we knew that the uh that the sun revolved around the earth. 500 years ago, we knew that the earth was flat. 100 years ago, we knew that humans could never fly. What else do we know? So I think we need to kind of be a little bit more flexible in our thinking, and this is why I love watching speakers because I speakers stimulate me. I watch everybody. Jacob, it's pathetic. I really watch everybody. I mean, when I used to live in Los Angeles, I'd go to live infomercials. I remember this one guy. He was the scummiest guy I've ever seen. He had a real nice suit, hair slicked back. He's like, there are two types of people in this world: good, hardworking people and rich people. I'm like, ugh, what a line. But it's good. I learned it's just as important to learn what you don't want to do as opposed to what you want to do. It's just as important. So I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent, but
It's all right. Now, for people that purchase your book, and what should they expect to get from it or take away from it?
well, you can preview it if you go to my podcast. It's called Misfits and Crackpots because I have one of the top reading programs in the world, which is called lazyreaders.com. Every month I give you, it's free. Every month I give you 10 book recommendations, three or four adult level, three or four young adult level, and three or four children's level books, all under 250 pages for people who say they have no time to read. Something that gives you can do that during a faculty meeting or when you're bored at the dentist office or whatever. Misfits and Crackpots is just there to inspire you with stories. I mean, here I'll give you a story. The story we ran last week was on there's these two women, Martha and Agnes. They're both choreographers in New York City, and Agnes has just opened up her third Broadway play, and the audiences seem to like it, but the critics have panned it. And she looks at Martha. She's like, "I give up. I'm just going to close it down. I'm just going to shut it down." And Martha looks at her. She's like, "You can't do that, Agnes. It's not for any critic to tell you what you can do. You can't even criticize yourself, but you got to understand this. There's only one you. There's never been another you. There's never going to be another you. And if you shut down this play, you're denying the world your gift." Well, Martha was Martha Graham, who's considered the mother of modern dance. She won Kennedy Center honors, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, very famous. And her friend was Agnes DeMille. Agnes won the same honors, and she became the very first woman to have three concurrent hits on Broadway. And she kept the show open, but she changed the name to Oklahoma. And
Um,
so that's what you're going to get out of the book are stories like, I'll give you one other one. You ever hear of Cliff Young, Jacob?
I
Cliff
don't think so.
So Cliff Young was a potato farmer in Australia. And Australia, like I think it's around 1983, they had this ultra marathon, a 10-day ultra marathon from Sydney to Melbourne, a distance of about 550 miles. And so the day of the ultra marathon, all of these 20 and 30-year-old world-class ultra marathoners get at the starting line, and then they're joined by Cliff Young, a 61-year-old potato farmer who's dressed in his overalls and galoshes, and he's going to run the race. And everybody's looking at him like, "What are you doing here?" And they're laughing at him. He has fake teeth. He can't even run with his fake teeth. He has to put them in his pocket because they hurt when he runs. And so they start the race, and everybody goes off. And like expected, Cliff Young is in last place behind everybody. And so they're running and they're running. And a funny thing happened that night. All the runners they go off to the side of the road to sleep. But Cliff Young, he was terrified. He didn't know you could sleep, and so he kept on running through the night. And so the next day, everybody's running, and then the next night, everybody goes to sleep. But Cliff Young, he didn't know you can sleep, so he runs through the night. He actually doesn't even run. He has like this fast walk he's doing. Well, here's the amazing thing about Cliff Young, Jacob, is not only 5 days later did Cliff Young win this ultramarathon at age 61, but second place was 10 hours behind him. He had set the record by almost 2 full days. And then when he found out there was prize money, he felt bad. And so he didn't take it and he just distributed it to all the other runners who finished. And then they basically named the race after him. He's like a folk hero in Australia. And the reason I just love that story is he just never gave up. He never stopped running. That's what I always tell people. Don't, how many friends of yours, Jacob, say they're going to start a podcast? They never start a podcast, but they're really good at criticizing your podcast. You
Yeah.
know, that annoys me. My youngest daughter, a teacher told her she couldn't do something, and this is what I told my daughter. I'm like, when a person says you can't do something, what they're really saying is they can't do it. Don't let other people put their limitations on you. I'm on your podcast, Jacob, because I admire you. You did something. Most people talk. This is why I don't like politicians. Quack, quack, quack. They talk, they don't do anything. Give me people that do things. Give me nonprofit founders. Give me pastors. Give me entrepreneurs that have a dream and they won't let anybody put them down. I mean, that's what I love. The nobility of your podcast. What you said was your purpose. That's a great purpose. There's a lot of people that are feeling down right now. And hopefully one of those people is listening to this podcast and there's something that either of us has said that's inspired them to keep on going. That's a really no, I mean, that's basically my prayer to God all the time. I'm like, use me. Use me. I hope when I die, I'm going to the good place. I'm pretty sure I am.
Now, and where can people find you online?
Well, as a thank you, Jacob, for you and your audience having to listen to me all this time, I wanted to give everybody a freebie. So if you go to freestoryguide.com, free story guide, guide like a tour guide, freestoryguide.com, I'm going to give everybody their own well-crafted story blueprint. What this is the actual process that Coach Jimmy and I take our clients through on how to create a well-crafted presentation. What this does for you is it takes away the guesswork and shows you exactly why to put different elements of your presentation and where to put them in your presentation. And what this means for you is the peace of mind that you're going to attract a lot more clients. You're going to have a lot more impact. You're going to make this world a better place. So if you go to freestoryguide.com, you'll get all of that. And I just really want to thank you, Jacob, for having me today. I really appreciate all that you do.
Of course. And it's been an honor to have you here on the podcast, and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. God bless.
All right. And that wraps it up today for the podcast. Tune in next week for another episode. Until then, God bless, and we'll catch you guys next Monday.